So should it be easier to become a police officer? In order to tackle staff shortages, Ontario is planning to eliminate tuition fees and post-secondary requirements in an attempt to recruit more police officers. So, yeah, there's some strong reaction coming from our crowd. Jax, what do you think?
I'll let the audience take over. No, I don't think it's a good idea. I think that if we are going to get more folks into policing, there has to be more to the actual education that comes with policing. I understand that they want to get numbers up, but I think that there is a very important balance that has to be made. And that's when you are getting into policing, what are you learning beyond, what are you learning beyond force and how to deal with folks? You need to be learning de-escalation. You need to be learning about mental health, not only for the officers, but also for the people on the other side of the officers. I think there's just access to becoming a police officer. Have your thoughts on that, but it's when you are a police officer, what are you being taught and how long are you being taught it? That is so essential.
But what if that's the plan? What if you dump out the requirement to go to college or university and instead you tack that exact training
Then tell me that's the plan. Then tell me that's the plan. Make that, Doug Ford can tell me that's the plan, because all I hear is that we want more police, we want less barriers around becoming a police person. Tell me what's gonna happen with the education that we're making people have better access to.
Okay, so what about the people who are already officers who probably also need that education?
I think that is also imperative.
Yeah, because I think that's also, I do actually think that this is one of the possibilities to get more people signing up. Do we need more police officers? Apparently somebody thinks we do. There's been a 50% reduction in the number of new applicants who want to become a police officer, and I get why, right? I mean, there's the defund police movement. It's hard to be a police officer today. We see it in the news all the time. It's dangerous, obviously we know that. But do I want a world where we have too few officers? That's to be discussed and debated. But I actually think it's not a bad idea, and here's why. Young people, we're looking at, what are we gonna say, 17, 18, 19-year-olds? Is that maybe what the age we're looking at? Who better than to teach good habits to than young people? I think that just if you have a fine arts degree and that's a post-secondary degree, I don't know how a fine arts degree makes you a better police officer. I'm just saying, just saying that you have a college.
It's the fact that your brain isn't fully formulated until you're 25.
The
frontal cortex isn't
we allow
fully
people
formulated.
to have cars. You're allowed to probably buy a gun.
You're not allowed to drink alcohol until you're 19. So if they're giving these to 17-year-olds, I mean, what could possibly go wrong? Here's a gun, no education.
I think it's reductive. I think it's reductive to say that it's just a gun.
But why wouldn't someone with a fine arts degree be a good police officer? I mean, a fine arts degree, you're learning about humanities. You're learning about stories. You're empathy.
Maybe.
That's the point of stories, is empathy.
Maybe. So, I mean, I think it's a question of, to me, as you were saying, Jax, to me, it's a question of what are we teaching them? What are we teaching them? And I do think if it's a more comprehensive approach, if you're gonna dump the requirement, then what gets put in instead? And I think a good dose of human psychology is in there. Obviously, as you said, de-escalation, mental health issues. It's almost like you have to teach them to be a quasi-therapist, because we know it's not about having the gun, it's understanding human psychology.
Yeah, I just don't know if every 17-year-old is capable of that. I think about myself at 17. What this reminds me of a little bit is what we've heard about stories about recruitment for the Army that's taken place in oftentimes lower socioeconomic groups, where you're trying to dazzle free education and certain amounts of money to people who really, really need it. And so they're not making choices necessarily for the long haul. Also, I have empathy for police officers. There's a lot of trauma that goes into that job. And I think you want to have people at their top mental game when they're going into and fully deciding what they're going to do. So they're at their best when they're dealing with traumatized people who are caught in a ring of crime.
I would say somebody who is an older officer who may have racist tendencies and will not take new education could be just as dangerous as a 17-year-old.
Well, I'll just say this flies, sure. This does fly in the face of what was just, everyone knows about the 2020 mass shooting that happened in Nova Scotia. We remember hearing about that, where someone impersonated a member of the RCMP. The recommendation from the RCMP came to create a 3-year degree-based model of police education. So this is sort of they're asking for more education. So maybe it's about getting on the same page in prevention.
So you're saying the RCMP's recommendation is completely the opposite as what we're hearing from the board.
and you mentioned, you know, these police officers having to essentially become a therapist, but I think that that speaks to the broader problem, which, you know, if we're going to give tuition breaks to police officers, we should also be giving tuition breaks to folks who are becoming therapists, who are becoming community workers, who are becoming social workers, because that helps the larger problem, which I fully understand that we can't tackle all at once, but if it is, you know, a societal problem, then this is one step to make the bigger picture better.
Yeah, I mean, the last thing I'll add is I think if you're going to cast a wider net, on the one hand, you could see the negative side of maybe trying to recruit from marginalized communities, but there is an upside. This could be a career path that somebody was thinking of or never thought of because they couldn't afford it, and it is now potentially a new career path. If you are a new immigrant and you can't afford a $15,000, which is what it costs to become a police officer in tuition, or maybe you are from a community that said, oh, you know, I never thought that that was a path. We do need more diversity. We need
we also
more
need,
diversity.
okay, but I'll just end with this. No question. But what we also need is less crime. And what drives most people to crime? It's low socioeconomic, lack of opportunity, mental health struggles, addiction struggles. I just want to know, this government consistently shows its lack of creativity, its lack of imagination, its lack of sort of nuanced approaches. And I want to see, to your point, more explanation about what are you doing on the back end to make sure that we actually do need eventually less police force.
Thanks for watching. We've got lots more discussion and debates on everything from food and fashion to pop culture and current events. Don't forget to click like and subscribe.